AA, which was.
All right. I think we have a good group in here so far. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining Congressman DeFazio's virtual press conference on House passage of the Build Back Better Act. I'm going to turn it over to Congressman DeFazio for an opening statement in just a moment, followed by statements from our guest speakers. Joining us today, in addition to Congressman DeFazio, we have John Tapagna, President of Eco Northwest, Andrea Peluso, Executive Director of Family Forward Oregon, Vandana Shrestha, State Director of AARP Oregon, and Celeste Maifen-Swingo, State Director of Environment Oregon. Please mute yourselves and remain muted so we can hear our speakers clearly. Once we have heard opening statements, I'll turn it over to the media for questions. To those in the media who've joined us today, thank you. If you have a question, please feel free to drop it in the chat or use the raise hand feature, and I will call on you to ask your question. We'll only be taking questions from media today, so if anyone else has a question, Build Back Better, follow up with our District Director, Dan Whalen, or myself, and we'll get you an answer. And with that, I'll turn it over to Congressman DeFazio for an opening statement. Congressman, take it away.
Thanks, King. This is a part 2 of the president's plan to move America into the 21st century in so many different ways. The first part of the package was the Infrastructure Investment Jobs Act, primarily focused on physical infrastructure, highways, bridges, transit, rail, broadband, water, wastewater, drinking water, and reinforcing the grid. It dealt to some extent with climate change, not so much as I would have liked, not so much as my bill would have done, but it is a huge investment, the largest single investment in our infrastructure. This is part 2. This is the Build Back Better, which is a much larger investment in dealing with climate change. But it's also a large investment in the social infrastructure of the United States of America, which lags behind the rest of the world. This legislation will bring down costs, essentially give tax cuts to families. It's going to create jobs, and we're going to have some great job training programs to integrate people who haven't been in the economy into good, high-paying jobs with wages as we rebuild in so many different ways with skills that go from physical infrastructure to home care for seniors with good wages. As I said, it's going to fight the climate crisis very meaningfully, the most meaningful steps ever. And it's going to help everyday Americans get ahead. The signature, accomplishment, I guess you could call it, I wouldn't, but of Donald Trump was a massive $3 trillion tax cut. And over 85% of the benefits went to people earning over $400,000 a year or large corporations. This is more than the inverse of that. The benefits in this legislation, as written in the House, 95% of the benefits will flow to people who are in less than $400,000 a year. We're turning what Trump did on his head. And we're also not borrowing the money to do it like he did. This is going to be a paid for bill, and you'll hear more about that later. But that's really kind of a key point to make here as we move forward. The provisions in here are very wide ranging, and I'm not going to cover them all, but I will cover some that are particularly important and meaningful to Oregonians. Childcare. An average Oregon family with 2 young kids spends 19% of their income on childcare per year. Now, add in housing costs, add in food and other things, utilities, you don't have much left. This bill would say that you would pay no more than 7% of your income for quality childcare. This will cover 9 out of 10 children in the state because there is a cap and a limit over which the benefits will not be available to people of high income. The child nutrition, it will expand free school lunch to 83,000 kids. I mean, this isn't a partisan issue. Kids go to school hungry. I've been at Maple Elementary in Springfield, and the kids on a Friday, and the people in the cafeteria say, boy, the kids really eat a lot today because they come back hungry on Monday and they don't get much at home over the weekend. That's a shame in the United States of America, and it shouldn't be that way. So free school meals, And then 270,000 children in Oregon, their parents will be provided resources for them to purchase food over the summer when the school nutrition programs aren't available. That's big. Kids are hungry, can't learn. The child tax credit, it's going to make the child tax credit permanent, fully refundable. This will go through 2022. This will affect 780,000 households in Oregon. In my district, over 43,000 households. It'll lift more than 9,000 children in my district out of poverty. This is the greatest anti-poverty program since LBJ and the Great New Deal. Then the earned income tax credit, $1,500 for 240,000 lower income Oregonians who are working. Elder care. I have background in gerontology. We used to have a very robust system in Oregon called Oregon Project Independence, where we strove to keep people in their homes and not stick them in institutions. And that program, unfortunately, of years of budget cuts by the state has pretty much gone by the by. This will have a new robust program to help keep our elders in their homes. Guess what? It's better for their quality of life. And it also saves the taxpayers a lot of money because sticking someone in a Medicaid institution is very expensive. And these workers will be paid a living good wage because this is federal money. Unlike a lot of home care workers. I mean, Oregon is doing better because we've organized a lot of them, but around the country, home care workers, child care workers, they're not getting paid anywhere near what they're worth. There's going to be rental assistance for about 300,000 Oregonians. It's going to have, as I said earlier, very robust job training components. It's going to expand Medicare and Medicaid coverage to 64,000 uninsured Oregonians, and another 60,000 will see their premiums lowered under the so-called Obamacare Affordable Care Act. Pell Grants will go up $550 for lower income students. I want to do more for students, and I think part of that can come out of the Civilian Conservation Corps. We're going to offer public service opportunities for 300,000 young Americans to go out and help mitigate for wildfires, do other things to help with climate and resilience, good jobs, working jobs, and give them a break on their loans if they already have loans, or give them credit if they are going to go on to school and borrow money, and they will be equipped with new skills. And then, of course, universal pre-K. But again, the biggest investment in this is about $500 billion to deal with climate change. Climate change threatens everything we care about, everything we know about, everything we love about Oregon, and the future of the planet is at risk. And we have to address this more meaningfully than we have so far. There's a lot of resistance on the other side of the aisle, even got problems with maybe a senator or two on our side of the aisle, but this has to get done, and it will get done. So that's sort of a very brief synopsis of what's in front of us. And the other thing is the way it's paid for. It will, largest corporations will pay their fair share. They're going to have to pay at least a 15% tax rate if they have over $1 billion in profits. A lot of them now pay zero or negative taxes. It's an interesting thing, unlike the Trump tax cuts. 1% excise tax on publicly traded corporations for stock buybacks, which they often do just enhance their bonuses and the value of the board of directors and the execs who hold lots of stock. Wealthiest Americans, 5% surtax on incomes over 10 million, 8% over 25 million. And then it closes loopholes that they've used to pay, avoid paying the Medicare tax on their trade or business income. And then finally, something I've been promoting for years. The IRS is outgunned, undermanned, and the corporate tax lawyers run circles, and the wealthy tax lawyers run circles around it. Tax avoidance is estimated at 50% among the highest income earners in this country. That's got to end. They're cheating the rest of us. You know, the IRS under Trump spent more time auditing people who got the earned income tax credit and a whole hell of a lot more of them than they did millionaires and billionaires with all these tax loopholes. So it's time that they ponied up. We're not even raising their taxes except for the surcharge on the very high income people. We're just saying, pay what you owe. And that's why this won't be inflationary. And that's now we'll move to our panel. And John Tabagna will expand at some length on that, on the transformative economic benefits and the impact of the nation and the lack of inflationary impact. Andrea Peluso, Executive Director of Family Forward Oregon, will discuss how investments in early education and childcare will improve the lives of millions. Vandana Shrestha, State Director of AARP Oregon, will discuss how to lower the cost of healthcare, prescription drugs, healthcare premiums, and home care. And then Celeste, boy, we got a lot of really great names here. My friend Swango, State Director of Environment Oregon, will discuss how BBB will tackle the climate crisis. So first, John. Well, I guess King was supposed to introduce you, but I did. John, you go.
All right. Well, thank you, Peter. So looking at the broad impacts of this, I would direct you to a nice piece November 4th out of Moody Analytics. Mark Zandi and company took the two bills together, the infrastructure bill that has passed and has been signed into law, and then this more recent Build Back Better social policy climate bill as a whole. The outlook there was about $2.4 million, 2.4 million jobs nationally, sort of mid-decade, with a fair number of those jobs, obviously in the infrastructure being what you would expect with respect to construction and some manufacturing behind it, but also quite a few jobs in the care economy, childcare, elder care, et cetera. And then obviously housing construction that might be facilitated through the affordable housing investments. So that's where I would go look for a sort of, I think, a fair take on the overall arch of these two packages together. I wanted to sort of just step through 3 points in terms of my reflections on these two bills. The first one are the sort of the child and family related investments that are in this package that just passed the House. So you've got $775 billion through some combination of child tax credit, the earned income tax credit, universal pre-K, paid leave, and childcare subsidies, et cetera. And those go into a context where we are now in this country in an era of sort of flat or declining labor force participation among parents. Because for too many, it has become sort of economically impossible to combine work and care for a family at the same time. And so you have to go back to the year 2000 to find the highest level of female labor force participation rate among 25 to 54-year-olds. We're now 2 percentage points below that. We also at the same time have sort of declining fertility rates and parents saying that they are having fewer kids than they would like to have. So if this country wants to turn that around and wants to make it make sense again to combine parenting with work, it has to be addressed. And I think this proposed bill that's going over to the Senate starts us down that path. Second piece, which is especially critical up and down the West Coast and in Oregon, is the investment in affordable housing. And I would say that up and down the West Coast, this was a self-inflicted public policy crisis. We've underproduced housing for the better part of 2 decades. We need to build a lot more housing than we have and keep up with job growth and population growth, et cetera. So this federal sort of foundational investment in affordable housing in particular provides a tailwind for state and local action that's going to have to continue, and there's going to have to be a fair amount of just pro housing supply policy to go along with this and make that federal investment work. And then I think the third thing is just sort of stepping back to the congressman's original work in that infrastructure package and look at those, the importance of the built environment. If you go into Raj Chetty's intergenerational economic mobility work, when he goes to look to see which localities have better mobility across generations than others, low commute times are one of those factors that seem to help with intergenerational mobility. And the story goes that, if you can move around and get out of segregated neighborhoods and have better connections to jobs and better connections to mentors, et cetera, and things are moving fluidly, there is more mobility. And so obviously the proof of this one will be in project selection and execution. But if we choose good projects and make good use of the money the federal government has made available to us, we should see improvements in productivity and mobility down the road. And then just finally on this notion of inflation, you can go to the Zandy piece, and I agree with it. These are sizable investments, but certainly relative to the American Rescue Plan and its predecessors, that was $5.5 trillion over the course of a couple of years. This is largely paid for trillions of dollars over the course of a decade in a large American economy. So while I'm certainly not going to go on record saying you shouldn't be concerned about inflation, we do have some challenges over the course of the next 6 to 9 months to work through. But I think the outlook on inflation after that window is much less concerning, and certainly this set of packages is not the primary driver.
Great.
So with that,
Andrea.
Hello, good morning. Thank you, Congressman DeFazio, for inviting me to join you today and for your help in passing this historic Build Back Better bill. My name is Andrea Peluso. I'm the Executive Director of Family Forward Oregon. We are a grassroots organization that works to organize mothers and caregivers across Oregon to fight for economic justice and support for caregiving. We are thrilled by the House's passage of the Build Back Better Act, which includes critically overdue investments in childcare and pre-K, elder care, and a national paid family and medical leave program. This is such a historic package of supports that are critically needed now by families all across Oregon. Things have been stark across the country and here at home. We work with mothers every day who are telling us about the impossible positions they are in because they don't have access to affordable childcare that meets their family's needs. This crisis, exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic, is taking a financial toll, but also a physical and mental health toll on mothers everywhere. Since March 2020, millions of women have had to leave the workforce in record numbers. Black, Latinx, and Pacific Islander women have been hardest hit by job losses and a lack of access to quality, affordable childcare and paid leave, compounding the already disparate health impacts these communities faced from the virus itself. We cannot come back equitably from the COVID health and economic crisis in a way that reaches all of our communities without the investments included in Build Back Better. Because caregiving has always and continues to fall disproportionately on the shoulders of women, lack of affordable access to childcare, elder care, paid family leave, and other programs force women out of their jobs at a much higher rate than it does men. The Build Back Better Act addresses these disparities by making the largest investment in childcare in our country's history. That will help us to build a system that provides access to affordable, quality childcare to Oregon families, ensuring that many families pay nothing for childcare and most families pay no more than 7% of their income for childcare. This will be a huge financial relief for families in Oregon, where the average annual cost of childcare for a toddler now is over $10,000 a year. Care work is the work that makes all other work possible. And with these investments, the Build Back Better Act helps us to build an equitable recovery for women who simply cannot work or stay working if they don't have access to childcare, elder care, paid leave, and other necessities. These child and elder care investments, along with paid leave, the child tax credit, and other investments, will provide more economic security for Oregon's families and ensure that our kids are being cared for in safe and supportive environments. And this funding for childcare, importantly, will allow us to finally start paying childcare providers the wages and benefits that they deserve. Childcare providers are mostly women and disproportionately women of color, and it's long past time for us to start paying them in line with the critical importance of their work. A childcare system that works for every family will mean economic security for Oregon women and families, childcare providers, and our state as a whole. Investments in childcare, elder care, and paid leave will grow our economy while also addressing the ongoing inequities that women and families of color face. There is no better way to jumpstart our economic recovery than by investing in care and the people who provide it. I'm really excited to be here today to celebrate this victory for Oregon mothers, caregivers, and the families who depend on them with Congressman DeFazio. We appreciate your hard work to pass this monumental bill in the House and look forward, we hope, to seeing those critical resources actually get to Oregon families. Thank you.
Thank you. Vandana. King? Vandana?
Yes, hi there.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this opportunity and for inviting me. And thank you for pronouncing my name so well too. Hi, everybody. I'm Vandana Shrestha with AARP Oregon. I'm the state director here. AARP is a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization, and we work on issues of health security, financial resilience, and livable communities. We have about 500,000 members here in Oregon, and we work on behalf of them and people 50 plus and their families. And I'm so thrilled to be able to join the congressman and other partners here to talk about the wonderful passage of Build Back Better in the House. And there are so many provisions here in this transformational bill, but I thought I would point out a couple of them that are of special interest to AARP. I'll start out with the fact that as it is, it would allow for Medicare to negotiate for lower drug prices. This is an issue that AARP has worked for many years. It would also prevent drug prices from rising faster than inflation and create out-of-pocket caps for Part D to $2,000. And it also puts a cap on copayment for insulin for those who are living with diabetes. This is a really critical step in providing real relief for seniors who are living with high drug prices. We here in America pay the highest drug prices in the country, in the world. And that just makes no sense at all. And, you know, this is something that older voters really want and have been vying for many years. And people should not be having to choose between prescription drugs and necessities like food and rent. And as Andrea said, you know, the issue of prescription drugs, I'm not just issue of prescription drugs, but the most impacted are usually communities of color and women as well. Another area that this Build Back Better covers is paid medical leave. So I'm not going to talk about that, but Congressman DeFazio touched on home and community-based care, which is a really important issue for AARP and AARP members and people 50 plus. This act contains additional funding for Medicaid program that provides home and community-based care for eligible older Americans and people with disabilities. And access to these services would help people stay at home, which is a really important aspiration for us as we grow older. ARP just released a new report, our home and community preference survey. And as always, because this is a survey that's done every few years, it shows that people, actually adults, 18 and over, say that they want to remain in their own home and community as long as possible. And an investment like this would really enable people to meet the kind of life that they see for themselves, living in community that supports them. There are also other provisions that include lowering drug prices and making care accessible for people in their 50 to 64-year-olds. But I'm not going to go into that, and just say and end by saying that this is just the first step. We have a long way to go because this goes to the Senate next. We'll be watching what happens. And I want to end by saying thank you, Congressman DeFazio, for your support and hard work. And I look forward to additional conversation. Thank you.
Thanks, Vandana. Celeste.
Thank you so much, Congressman DeFazio, for inviting me to speak today and for your leadership in passing the Build Back Better Act. My name is Celeste Mayfrin-Swango. I'm the State Director with Environment Oregon. We're a statewide environmental advocacy organization working for clean air, clean water, open space, and a livable climate. Following an intense 18 months of record-breaking drought, record-breaking wildfires, and record-breaking heat here in Oregon, we were thrilled to see the U.S. House of Representatives pass the Build Back Better Act, which includes historic investments to combat climate change. The reality is we know what we need to do to solve climate change, but too often political gridlock and outdated ways of thinking get in our way, especially when it comes to taking national action. And that's why the progress made last week with the passage of the Build Back Better Act, the largest ever federal investment in climate solutions, is particularly worth celebrating. Finding agreement on such a monumental bill hasn't always been easy, but through every twist and turn of the legislative process, Oregonians and Americans across the country have been solid in their support for clean energy and clean transportation as key ways to address climate change. Investments to tackle the climate crisis included in the Build Back Better Act are a 10-year extension and expansion of clean energy tax incentives, which would decrease the cost of installing rooftop solar by up to 30% and take up to $12,500 off the cost of an electric vehicle. It includes rebates for home energy efficiency and electrification projects. That includes a new program to reduce methane emissions, which are more than 80 times more potent in warming the planet than carbon dioxide over the first 20 years. It includes funding to electrify US Postal Service vehicles and medium and heavy duty vehicles, such as garbage trucks and school buses. It includes funding for electric vehicle charging infrastructure, as well as tax credits for electric bikes and electric 2- and 3-wheeled vehicles. And these are just a few of the many, many things to be excited about in this bill. This bill also includes groundbreaking levels of investment to clean the air that we breathe, clean up toxic sites, and protect our lands, waters, and wildlife. Congressman DeFazio, you've been a steadfast climate leader in Congress, and on behalf of our tens of thousands of members, the student leaders that we work with, my fellow environmental advocates, and just me personally as the mom of 2 little girls, thank you for all that you've done to ensure the passage of this bill. Now, all eyes are on the Senate. We urge swift passage of this bill in the Senate so we can get it to the president's desk and continue building the cleaner, greener future that we've all been working for. Thank you again for having me.
Thanks, Celeste. You did remind me that I neglected to mention the portion of the Build Back Better that my committee has put into the bill. We're trying to improve on the Senate written Investment in Infrastructure Jobs Act. They deleted my mandatory greenhouse gas reduction program on the states, but we can't reinstate that under the Byrd rule. But I can have a voluntary program, and I'm putting $4 billion into a grant program for states that set and meet meaningful targets to reduce fossil fuel pollution from transportation. And I think a lot of states will compete for this money. Then also, the Senate was way lower on transit than my bill. Transit is a way to dramatically reduce congestion and reduce pollution from fossil fuel vehicles, people commuting to work. And so I've got a novel program which will partner between Housing Urban Development and the Federal Transit Administration to access affordable housing. Some of the affordable housing we're going to build under this bill, and existing affordable housing where people are locked into transit deserts and can't meaningfully commute to good paying jobs. 10 billion more for a high-speed rail that serves city centers. Again, something that wasn't in their bill. And then $4 billion for equity. Through the highway building craze, we divided so many communities. We divided many communities of color or poor communities. They suffer from the pollution, and they've been split asunder. The president went down to New Orleans and did a press event by a skyway. It's aged out. Going to rebuild the skyway and continue to divide the community? Not a good idea. Under this proposal, we're going to get rid of that skyway. We're going to rejoin the community. My bill had very significant provisions in there to prevent gentrification. The Senate bill doesn't, but I'm going to work with the secretary on conditions there to prevent that and rejoin these communities. We've got it right here in Portland, over in the Albina and Rose Quarter area, where we're looking at trying to do something similar there. So that's, and then billions more for wastewater, drinking water, lead pipe removal, and that. So those are a few things from my committee that I forgot to mention. So thanks. With that, King, you want to take over as moderator?
Yes, thank you, Congressman. With that, we'll turn it over to questions. As a reminder to the media that have joined us today, please use the raise hand feature to ask your question, and I'll prompt you to ask it, or feel free to drop it in the chat. With that, we'll go to a question from Mark Brennan with the Sayus Law News in Florence. Congressman, Mark asks, could you comment on any projects that are planned for the Oregon coast or in the Florence area in general? Thank you.
Well, we're still working on our coastal bridges. This is back to the other bill, a large new dedicated bridge program. We just did renovate and extend the life of the Sayus River Bridge, but there are others along the coast that need that same work. Again, back to the IIJA, and also in this, money for ports. And that will include, hopefully no longer getting rationed dredging here on the Oregon coast, something that I've fought for years. There's never been enough money to dredge all our ports properly every year and make them safer for commercial and, recreational fishers. So that's going to benefit the coast. There's money for, we're looking at potentially finally a container terminal in Coos Bay, and that can only happen because I helped the state buy the railroad, then we've been gradually improving that rail line. So that will benefit the whole coast, and then, of course, I got in the appropriations bill, which is pending. It's been passed in the House, pending in the Senate. Everything's pending in the Senate. $30 million to move ahead with the dredging, with the jetty rebuilding there, so that the port is going to be ready for the container facility, if that comes to fruition, and it's being negotiated right now. And then, of course, all the people there's a lot of seniors on the coast. They'll benefit from the home care provisions, from the reduction in drug prices. There's, a lot of families over there that are struggling to find good childcare. They're going to benefit. So, if you look at the whole list of things here, it applies, equally almost everywhere across the state, particularly outside our major urban areas, which are doing better for the most part.
Thank you, Congressman. We have a follow-up question from Mark. He asked, could you speak to the chances of the Senate passing the Build Back Better Act mostly intact?
Well, the parliamentarian holds a seance with a dead senator to decide what can go in and out of the bill. Right now, she's using the crystal ball, so I can't access it to predict what might happen in the Senate. There's going to be a lot of, first they go through the seance with the dead senator. That's called the bird bath, ridiculous rules written by a senator 29 years ago, dead 12 years, and they're bound by her interpretations of his writings 29 years ago. Then they move on to what they call a vote-a-rama, where there are unlimited amendments, and we have a 50-50 Senate. So should one Democrat divert on any one amendment, something could come out. But the president is putting on a lot of pressure to keep this thing intact and get it through intact. And we already negotiated the numbers down, and we think we're in a good spot. And we think this is something, if you look at the polling, if you ask people generally, they don't really know what's in it. But if you start polling on the individual elements of this bill, they are tremendously popular.
Thank you, Congressman. We have a question from Henry Houston with the Eugene Weekly. He says, the US supply chain has been a concern for many Americans for the past year. How does the $5 billion in the bill benefit the country's supply chain? And will it help avoid future supply chain shocks we've experienced recently?
I thought ports were, I get the numbers mixed up, but I thought ports were 17 billion in the bill. And ports right now are scrambling to lease additional space for the piles of containers they have, which are blocking the ports. The president has been jawboning. The supply chain is private. The marine terminal operators who accept the freight coming in, they're private. The truckers, the rail that take the materials out of the port, they're private. The warehouses are private. And then organized labor. The president has some substantial agreement among ports on the West Coast, and I think now Savannah too, that they'll run 24/7. Now they can't mandate that their marine terminal operators run 24/7, but they're putting pressure on them to do that. This is an issue that's been longstanding. Back when I chaired the subcommittee in 06, 07 to 10, I looked at drayage out of the ports. It's a mess. And the people, some truckers basically at the end of a very long week owe as much money as they earned because of the congestion and the ripoff that goes on there. They're deemed contractors. They're not contractors, they're employees. I'm hoping we can get that fixed and get them decent compensation, and you'll find more truck drivers willing to go to the port. And I hope the Obama administration will do that. I'm going to have my oversight and investigation committee look at all the causes of supply chain delays and look at solutions. For years, for instance, I have proposed that we reinstate a law. There used to be a law that if a warehouse detained you, you were making a delivery and they detained you for over an hour, they had to pay you. That law was done away with. And now a lot of truckers arrive at a warehouse and the warehouse says, hey, gee, we don't have a place for you to park and it's going to be about 8 hours, and oh, by then you'll be out of time, so good luck. That's unconscionable and that's got to change. So I'm going to try yet again to reinstate detention time on these warehouses. It's no skin off their back if the truckers are sitting there for hours on end. We had testimony at a whole hearing on this last week, and an expert said that out of an average 11-hour shift by a long haul truck driver serving the supply chain in ports, they drive 6. So we're losing 40% of their productivity because of these bottlenecks, which we can deal with. Anything else?
Do we have any more questions from anyone today? Let's see anyone raising hands.
I was just thinking about adding to our supply challenges, putting into the conversation something some people I think don't think about as a supply issue, which is our real shortage of childcare. Currently, it's every county in the state of Oregon has been a desert for childcare before COVID for at least one age group of kids, and that's only gotten worse recently. And I appreciate so much the robust investments that this Build Back Better Act will make in starting to finally invest in building a workforce and facilities that are sufficient to the amount of childcare that our families in Oregon need, and will really help to deal with some of the supply challenges we've had in that sector as well.
Yes, Andrea, it's a great point. And back in the rescue package, which we did last spring, we tried to mandate a minimum $15 an hour wage for childcare workers, some of whom in other states are earning the federal minimum wage, which is absolutely absurd. Putting our children in the care of people who earn $7.25 an hour, whatever the federal wage, it's ridiculous. Unfortunately, the Senate parliamentarian ruled that we couldn't do that under reconciliation. We're trying to find ways in this bill to deal with that, though. So I see Dick Hughes has his hand up, King.
Yep, we're going to go to Dick to ask his question. Go ahead and unmute yourself, Dick.
Thank you. Congressman, I was reading a national report today that said a number of rural leaders around the nation are worried about whether they'll be able to access the rural funds in the infrastructure bill. And I presume the same thing would apply here. Their concern is, even though money is designated for rural communities, that they don't have the expertise in going after that. Is there any setup or way to help people, these rural communities, make sure they get the money they should and be able to compete on a level playing field?
Well, actually, another part of my committee's contribution to Build Back Better is in the Economic Development Administration to provide what's called pre-development assistance to chronically distressed communities. And that's right in line with what you're talking about here, Dick. They don't have the expertise they don't know what federal grants are available. They don't have the expertise to apply for them. So that is a key component, which I also put in that bill, and hopefully that will survive the Senate process, and then they will have access to professionals to consult with them on how to access these funds. But there are substantial funds dedicated down to the rural level. The big cities are not going to be able to access those funds, but you're right. A lot of rural areas are going to need help accessing them.
Thank you.
Do we have any more questions from the media today? All right.
Okay. Well, thanks, everybody. Thank you. Thanks to all the panelists for contributing your time. And let's just keep pushing the Senate. Let's make it a year-end gift for the United States of America. Thanks.